Week 12 is upon us, and it is getting very, very spicy down the tail stretch here in the NFL as we inch closer and closer week by week to the postseason. Some interesting games over the past weekend. Obviously, you had the Cowboys blowout of the Vikings to top it all off, which was pretty wild and impressive. Which, leads me yet to another week where I remind myself that my initial read so far on a lot of these teams has been pretty good. We've had such a wacky season, and the wacky variance has made it so some teams, like I've said in the past, have been overachieving, and some teams have underachieved, obviously. Oddly enough, it's the teams that are overachieving that are starting to settle down, and teams that I thought that would be really good are for some reason not good at all. It's just interesting how the NFL plays out like that. But I might have jumped a gun on a couple of these teams, ranking them where I ranked them. But the more I watch them play, especially lately, it's not looking like it's boding too well for some of them as we get closer. So closer to the playoffs. Let's get to it. Obviously, Houston Texans at number 32. So the Houston Texans, again, they've been, I don't know how many weeks they've been sitting down here at the bottom of the power rankings. They're probably going to be fighting for the number one overall pick. A lot of good prospects coming out of this year's draft with some really good edge rushers, some really good quarterbacks, some good offensive linemen. This team's in total rebuild mode. I don't really know who their coach is going to be, obviously. I'd like to see them give Lovie Smith a crack, but they would have to find themselves, a really good offensive coordinator that would want to come there and work with this team. This team, is, in my opinion, is played pretty solid for a 1-8 team in terms of they've had a lot of tough outings with a lot of teams, but, they just don't have the juice in almost every position, especially at quarterback. Ideally, I think they're going to be in the quarterback sweepstakes. Probably going to go with C.J. Stroud, who just keeps looking better and better, in my opinion. Could go with Bryce Young and the quick release, but there's a lot of stuff you don't get with Bryce Young, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But, yeah, so Houston, 32. Carolina Panthers, like I've said from the beginning, this is one of the teams where I did think they'd be a little bit better and thought they could be a sneaky team because there is talent on both sides of the ball, this team. It's just not really coached well and well put together, obviously. Baker Mayfield, he's probably Dunsky. He's probably going to be a backup quarterback for the rest of his career. Obviously, they just don't have the juice through the air, even though they got a couple decent weapons there with Moore and Terrence Marshall Jr. Got rid of Christian McCaffrey. There's a good chance this team is probably going to go quarterback too. I doubt a free agent would go there. I don't really think a guy like Lamar Jackson would go there. I don't think Aaron Rodgers would want to play there. So they'll be in the quarterback sweepstakes too. They'll probably pick who doesn't get picked if they end up picking second, which you can't go wrong. There's like 4 pretty solid quarterbacks in this draft class. There's 4 first-rounders in this draft class. So, yeah, they played tough against the Ravens, and we'll get to the Ravens later. But, again, this is a team that does have talent on both sides of the football, and I really think a coach that goes here is getting some pretty good young pieces. So, Carolina at 31. Las Vegas Raiders, yeah, I know they won, but the team they won is against his ass. His team plays no defense. All past couple weeks, all the players been crying and pointing fingers and shit. This team's just not good defensively, not good on the offensive line. They don't get a win until they play against another bad team. This is another team you would probably want to coach, considering they do have a high-level quarterback. They got Devontae Adams. They got some decent skill position players and stuff like that. You would have to go hard in free agency to build the offensive line and defense up. But, yeah, Las Vegas Raiders. Knew they'd finish last. Didn't think it was going to be this bad, but Las Vegas at 30. Pittsburgh Steelers at 3-7. Another team that you would probably love to coach. Obviously, they're not going anywhere with their coach as much as, people like to float around. Tomlin's one of the greatest coaches of all time. This team shines on defense. They got solid defensive personnel for the most part. Obviously, they have an elite pass rusher. Their front seven is really good with their pass rushing group there. TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, They got, a few linebackers that are solid, one that's, very inefficient. Probably won't be there next year. I don't think they picked up Bush's option on his original contract. Love the wide receivers. People talk trash about Deontay Johnson with the drops and stuff. If he could shore those up, he's one of the better slottish type wide receivers in the league. And then obviously it's only a matter of time before, like I said, a lot of coming out of college, but he had injury and character concerns. George Pickens, he looks like a potential, number one in the making. I will say I like what I've been seeing a lot out of Kenny Pickett. Offensive line's ass. They can't protect him. He has to run around and make a lot of off-platform throws, but he's playing tough. Seems like a smart quarterback. I don't think he makes the worst decisions in the world. They played the Bengals tough yesterday, albeit, Burrow had 2 bad turnovers. Mostly not his fault, throwing the football, and TJ Watt's just like, I'll jump up and fucking get an interception 5 yards away. But, still a tough team, still a well-coached team. They got rid of Claypool, and that's just a testament to, what Tomlin's looking for. He wants to do the best that he can coaching. When you got a guy that, seems to be more about himself than, the rest of the team and stuff, you move off those players. Unless that player's a quarterback and they're exceptional, at some point some guys are just too much in the locker room. So, yeah, Pittsburgh, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I have a feeling they'll stick with Pickett. Unless they really think one of these quarterbacks are better than Pickett. They should be trying to shore up that offensive line this spring. So we'll see what they do. Pittsburgh, 3-7. Detroit Lions, 4-6. So the Detroit Lions, they're an interesting team. I've seen a lot of places rank Detroit, a lot higher than they should, even though they're 4-6. But this team's just absolutely atrocious defensively for the most part. I do like the fact that Jeff Okudah's bounced back and played. Where this team shines is on offense, although I think it's a little bit inconsistent. And obviously when they play a lot of the better teams, it just tends to, kind of peter out. But at currently, I think they're like in the top 15 or maybe top 10 in points per game. But it's very inefficient. They just got some explosive boundary players, explosive downfield players, and Jared Goff's just like, football country. At least he's fucking out there just throwing the football around. And, they're solid at running the football, too. They got a good contrast with Jamal Williams and Swift. I think Williams got like 13 or 14 touchdowns or something like that. So offensively, this team could be, sneaky. But defensively, I can't see this team getting to 500. I'd be surprised if this team even got to 500. So right now I got them pretty low. I think people freak out seeing 4-6 and they're so used to Detroit barely winning games and stuff like that. But this isn't a good football team. They're like a streaky offensive football team that doesn't play any defense. So Detroit at 28. Jacksonville to me, I just think if Jacksonville really plays to the best of its ability, they're just as good as the rest of these teams behind them. So I haven't slid them under some of these teams that I've already spoken about. Second-year quarterback Trevor Lawrence playing better than last year, but I really don't think he has that much help. I know Christian Kirk is playing pretty decent this year, but he's definitely not a number one. There's just a lot of things that Christian Kirk lacks in the ability to do. A lot of downfield stuff, jump ball stuff, physicality. He's definitely more of a B tier wide receiver with some more high end slot capability. I like Etienne. He's explosive and stuff, but it's a running back. They're always 2 steps away from getting hurt. Offensive line's okay, and the defense just they played tough the first handful of weeks, then kind of just imploded. Interesting to see what Jacksonville does in the draft and the offseason. It's hard, I think people forget, they don't take into account that people don't want to play in certain places. I've been told Jacksonville's kind of like a shithole. It's like not many people line up to go play in Jacksonville. That's why they got Trevor Lawrence, so Jacksonville 27. So the Broncos all the way down to 26. This is another team. It's bad. Did think it would be this bad. Losing to the Raiders at home, just absolutely brutal. This team is just disjointed. Defense, one thing I will say is this defense has been one of the better defenses all year. And you kind of feel bad for defense when this offense can't get it together. I mean, they have a middle-of-the-pack offensive line. I know they lost Javonte Williams, but they do have good weapons. Russell Wilson so far this year is a shell of his former self, so I don't have much to say about Denver. They're going to get a coaching change, all that happy stuff. They'll be picking at the bottom of the draft. See what they do. Denver, 26. Chicago Bears, 3-7. So this is one of those teams where I have a love for them. Like, they've bounced all over my power rankings, and some people put them higher than I would normally put them. Some people put them lower than I normally put them. But again, this is a team that's in one of those weird situations where, they do have their franchise quarterback, in my opinion. They're just going to have to build around him. They're not, what I mean by they're in a weird situation is the team's not good enough for them to have one of those windows where your team's pretty solid and your young quarterback is really good. Could we make a run at the playoffs or maybe a Super Bowl? It's the opposite. They got a really good quarterback and just a bad roster. Some good young players on this roster. Again, this is another team that I would like to coach if I was a coach. In terms of rushing, they're in the top 10 in terms of EPA per play per rush, whether it's a quarterback or running back. Fields has a fucking bunch of rushing touchdowns, a bunch of throwing touchdowns. I don't remember throwing touchdowns. I think he's got like 11 throwing touchdowns and like 7, 8, 9 rushing touchdowns, and he's rushed for almost 800 yards. He could possibly make Lamar Jackson's Lamar Jackson's. He could possibly be Lamar Jackson's rushing total for the season. He's been throwing the ball a little more, so I don't think he's going to do it. But I do love some of the young players on this football team. Montgomery's a beast. I do like Darnell Mooney. They just picked up Chase Claypool. I just think they need to, fix this offensive line is huge. It's amazing to see what Fields has done this year with one of the worst offensive lines in the year. Offensive lines. I do love this team's secondary. This man on the screen, Jaquan Brisker, who I spoke about last week, Jaylon Johnson. They got some good young secondary players. They got to shore the front seven up, though. So, on both sides of the ball, the trenches just need a lot of work. But I would love to coach this team and help rebuild this team if I was a coach. With Justin Fields, I really think the future's bright for Chicago if they make the right moves. Chicago 25. All the way down to 24. Sadly, the Rams. And, we were talking about the pod after the Super Bowl last year. We were just like, we thought the Rams could at least get back to the Super Bowl. We really thought there was a shot for the Rams to at least get back to the Super Bowl. But this team's had just a slew of injuries. They've lost pieces on defense. Stafford's playing banged up. And the team is just pretty much disheveled. This team's going into the tank. So they're in an odd situation. I love Stafford. My boy Anton and I called it. When they traded for Stafford, I'm like, that team's going Super Bowl. We didn't know if they'd win, but they were our favorite for the NFC side to go Super Bowl. They ended up going. They ended up winning. I like Stafford. I'd have to go look and see if they signed him, extended his contract, or if they traded him and just are using his contract now. If you're the Los Angeles Rams, you've already moved a lot of draft capital to get some of the players. You don't really have too much of a draft. If I'm the Rams and I'm struggling now and I struggle next year, if I can make the proper moves, and people probably wouldn't like this, but if it got real bad, you could probably easily move Stafford, or you could move Aaron Donald, as much as people don't like it, for a boatload of picks and go get yourself the players of the future. Donald's talking about retiring a lot. Everyone, freaks out. I love Aaron Donald. He's a transcendent talent. Like my boy Adam says, he's revolutionized the position. But I do think that teams don't know when to sell high. It's one thing soccer knows how to do. At Donald's age, and after him saying he's wanted to retire on more than one occasion, if I'm the Los Angeles Rams and I'm doing business, I would probably put the feelers out and be like, hey, which one of you teams that wants to fucking get after Super Bowl needs just a couple more pieces on defense? We'll fucking trade Aaron Donald for a boatload of picks. Maybe trade for next year's first. Go knock on one of these teams that's going to be in the playoffs as a bunch of picks. Eagles have already traded for guys, but I mean, like, knock on the door, see what's popping. Maybe get yourself a quarterback, train him behind Matt Stafford. But just a thought. I know people are like, oh my God, would you really trade Aaron Donald, a D tackle, as elite as he is at his age? You have no draft capital for the future. You're 3-7. I'd consider, depending on what type of haul I get. But this team's booty. Los Angeles 24. 23, New Orleans Saints sit at 4-7. So Saints have always been a hard team to peg down because they've had a really good roster. But what's holding this team back is obviously quarterback play, health at times. Dalton's actually played really, really well for them. He's been steady. He's like top, I think he's like 14th in EPA per play. But you don't get a lot of big plays with Dalton. He's accurate, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. When you have good offensive line, he can shell the ball around to a lot of different guys, spread the pill around. But it's just not explosive enough. And the defense personnel is really good, but they've given up a lot of points at times. And the quarterback play and the defense being a little leaky every now and then. I think a lot of their defenders are also getting a little older. They got an odd mix of older and younger players. Talented team, just not enough juice. They got some players to think about moving off of eventually. Thomas, Alvin Kamara, stuff like that. So this team could possibly shell a bunch of their pieces away and go into rebuild mode. So New Orleans Saints 4-7. Indianapolis Colts 4-6-1. So Colts are Bunzito. Everyone loves them. I don't know why. They got their boy back, his first game back. I think he rushed for like 81 yards. He got shut down by the Eagles. Jeff Saturday, his only game plan is, I had my buddy laughing. And Jeff Saturday's freaking game plan every week is like, he can't give you an actual strategic game plan. He's like, we're just gonna come out, we're gonna punch him in the mouth. That's his game. He's one of those guys. That's his game plan. The passing offense is ranked 19th. They were wicked. They were worse with Ellinger. So I don't understand why you would bench Matt Ryan. It just makes no fucking sense. They acted like, Saturday was a genius for bringing him back. Coach, I would assume that their last coach there was just pulling at straws, just maybe last ditch effort. Hope Ellinger can win you some games so he can keep his job. But this team's not as good as we thought they were going to be defensively. They're not as good as everyone thought they'd be offensively. A lot of that is because they lost the best running back, arguably, in the NFL. He's back. This team is in position to possibly make a run in a weaker division to make a run of the playoffs. I don't see it happening because I just think the Titans are better and a few other teams are on the rise too. I just don't think they make it in. So Indianapolis Colts 4-6-1. So the Cleveland Browns have one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. I've spoke about this ad nauseum. They get bumped up to by proxy, even though they're sitting there at 3-7. I just think the roster is better than all the other teams. I think they can compete and or beat all the teams behind them. Not a lot you need to say about this Cleveland Brown team. It's just you know what to do against this team, especially because they don't have a quarterback. You stack the box, and just play the run game. But their defense is really stout. Front seven's gnarly. Defensive backs are pretty good, although their defensive backs have been a little bit banged up. This defense has given up, some points here and there. But the real big problem is they're not explosive down the field. I know Amari Cooper's played well, but Brissett's basically just spamming it to him. Sitting here at 3-7, they get Deshaun Watson back in a week or two. This next game, I don't know who they play this week, is going to be huge for them. They have to win this next game. And then they get Watson back. They'll be sitting at 4-7. It's possible they can sneak back into the playoffs, which is a big part of the reason why I have this team here. If Watson comes back, hits the ground running, he's back in full practice now. I wouldn't be surprised if this team could make a run at the final spot in the playoffs, but it'll be real tough sledding. Love the roster, but yeah, tough ask. Cleveland 21. Atlanta Falcons, my buddy Chad. Shout out to Chad because Chad loves these Falcons. He's over there just like pumping his fist. Again, blueprint for Atlanta. Atlanta sitting here, at 5-6. They're one of the best rushing teams in the league. Cordero Patterson is barely off an injury. gets, I think it's like his 10th, 9th or 10th kick return touchdown against the Bears Sunday. They're like 6th or 7th in EPA per rush, and they're 8th in yards. And they're top 10 in yards after contact on the ground. They got pretty good, they have, pretty good offensive line play. Better than I thought they were going to have. They got some veterans on that offensive line. Little bit of strikeability through the air, but now they lose their tight end, Kyle Pitts. I managed to remember his name, which isn't really going to help them, which is odd, though. I was telling someone, I hope Kyle Pitts hits free agency, because if you look at his usage rate, they really didn't use him all that much in the system this year, which is crazy because last year, his rookie year, he was a cheat code. Sometimes you see these tight ends, these athletic tight ends, sometimes they don't get in the end zone all that much, but he cracked 1,000 yards last year, being like the only dude through the air for that team. I would love the Bengals to scoop him up, man. That'd be gnarly. But this Atlanta team stacked the box against this team. Mariota's okay when he's not injured, but this team's atrocious defensively. This would be a fun team to coach. I mean, Arthur Smith looks like he's going to keep his job, but this team's just okay on offense and just really bad on defense. They're okay enough on offense where it makes them competitive. Obviously sitting here at 5-6, but yeah, Atlanta at 20. New England Patriots. So a lot of people will probably be like, "Oh, why you got the Patriots all the way down to 19? Why got they're 6-4." This team's not that good. They're not that explosive through the air. They're solid in the run and they're solid on defense, but the lack of explosivity just kills this team. This team's really consistent. Just go back and look at the teams they've beaten. I've pulled it up here. So they beat the Jets. Jets have been overachieving. Not good at quarterback. Play good defense. Just offense is like, they beat the Jets 10-3. They beat the Colts, who were ass, 3-26. They beat the Jets 22-7. Then they got blown out by the Bears. They beat the Browns. They beat the Lions. They beat the Packers. Lost to the Ravens. Beat the Steelers by 3. Lost to the Dolphins. Beat the Raiders. Beat the Panthers. And lost to the Giants by 2. This team's not that good. All you Patriots fans, freak the fuck out. This team's not a top 15 team. That's all I got to say. New England Patriots, 19. Arizona Cardinals. So I also probably get a lot of flack for not having, Arizona down in the 20s, but Arizona's sitting here at 4-7. They did last night would have been a tougher game. They played tough in the first half, but they didn't have Kyler Murray, which was unexpected. I did not know he was going to not play last night. The reason why this team is neutral sitting here and hasn't moved from 18 is because personally, when Kyler Murray is playing the best of his ability with this athletic roster, I just think this team and roster is better than the teams behind it. I just think they play in a tough division. So, Arizona sitting here 4-7. Green Bay Packers, similar. They get bumped down 1 at 4-7, but just like the team I just talked about, the Arizona Cardinals, this team's capable of playing up to the level of the top 10-ish guys when they play to the best of their ability. They just lack explosivity through the air. It's going to be interesting to see if Christian Watson can keep up his streak. Is this like a lucky little streaky blip, or is he going to keep up, his streak of being available, getting open, and catching the football? This team sits here at 4-7. Defense is underachieved, but they still have one of the best offensive lines in the league. Still have one of the best run games, although the run game's been kind of, for me, it's been on and off the past couple weeks. But Green Bay sits here at 4-7. Still could make a run, possibly, at being a wild card team. But I don't know. I'd lean more to them missing because Vikings are still a good football team. But, you know what it is. Aaron Rodgers, the monster. The team just lacks explosivity through the air. And the defense at times hasn't been holding up to its end of the bargain. Interested to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers going forward. I've heard people calling for Love. Well, if Love was that good, I know they're sitting on behind him, but, Love's not good. So, interested to see what they do. Maybe if they're bad enough, maybe they trade Aaron Rodgers for a bunch of picks and blow it up. Again, I love Aaron Rodgers. He's a Super Bowl winner. He might be the best arm talent ever to play football, but no one to sell high. Rodgers is what, 39? Man, I would probably trade him to an NFC team or an AFC team, I mean. But man, you could get a haul for Aaron Rodgers at 39 years old, man. You could send him to a place he'd like to play, nice and cushy. You know, I'm trying to think of some teams you could send him to. Let's see what teams you could send Aaron Rodgers to. Well, I've already said the 49ers should probably mortgage their next 2 years for him, because if you put Aaron Rodgers on that team, I would bet big money they'd go to the Super Bowl and or win it. But Aaron Rodgers, he would go good with the Jets roster. He would go good with let's see who else. I mean, the Browns wouldn't do it because they got Deshaun Watson, sadly, but I could see him, he'd be good with the Browns roster. I don't see him playing for the Colts. Maybe the Titans, if they are willing to maybe do a quarterback swap. I could see Aaron Rodgers playing for the Giants, possibly, but I don't think they'd make that move because they got draft capital and a young quarterback. Commanders could be a spot. I don't see that, but I really like the 49ers. Really love the 49ers for him. And they wouldn't trade him in division. 49ers would be solid. I just feel like that if he goes anywhere, I feel like that'd be the place. The 49ers, but I don't think they'll trade him. When a guy's that good, you got to let him finish out his contract and just hope you can build around him. So, 49ers, Green Bay Packers at 17. Down 1 from 15, the New York Jets, and they're at 6-4. So I still like a lot about this football team, but this is one of those football teams that, they have a solid roster, but they're just really bad at quarterback. I liked the arm talent of Zach Wilson. I loved the athleticism of Zach Wilson. But it's starting to look more and more like he's not the guy for this team and that he's not going to be a high-tier quarterback. I feel like with the offensive weapons this team has, a solid offensive line, a really good defense like this, they shouldn't be falling backwards. I just feel like he has enough here to where he needs to show that he can take over games and just, be that guy. And I'm just not seeing it. I hear a lot of weird things. I don't know how much is true, like that he's like kind of like a douchebag and doesn't take accountability for the things he's done wrong and shit and stuff like that. I don't know how long Salah lasts here either. I mean, a lot of people ain't clamoring to go run to, live in Jersey and be the Jets coach, but I see this team missing the playoffs. When you look at their remaining schedule, I see this team sliding back and being around 500 and just missing out on the playoffs, mostly because the quarterback play just isn't good enough. Love Sauce Gardner, love C.J. Mosley, Quinnen Williams. They got really good defensive pieces. Their front seven's got depth, young depth. Offensive line, even without Mekhi Becton, is playing pretty well. Good young running backs, albeit one's hurt, and they traded for James Robinson. Love their offensive personnel in terms of their wide receivers. They're young, really good players. But yeah, I think this Jets team has overachieved a little. I think it's beaten some teams that it shouldn't have beaten because those teams weren't clicking, and I also think that their schedule hasn't been the hardest. So yeah, Jets at 16. Good team. Good, solid football team, just not enough juice, and I'm not really too high on the coaching staff either, so Jets at 16. So I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. Just like I said, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. Number 15, the New York Giants, sitting at 7-3, and people are always like, oh, yeah, you're probably going to do your power rankings this way based off records. Well, if it was based off records, the Giants would be in the top 10, but they're not for me because I think they've underachieved. Their strength of schedule in terms of how good the teams have panned out to be now is not good. And they have the third hardest strength of schedule going forward based off how well these teams have played. Daniel Jones has played better. I wouldn't mind if the Giants extended him for the right amount of money, considering the fact they're not going to be able to draft a quarterback. But for me, it would have to be the right amount of money. I'm not paying him $30 million. Based off what I know he can do, and based off him playing better this year as opposed to the last 2 years and taking care of the football, I could probably pay him around 20 because quarterback is important. But this team still needs help on the offensive line. Right now, it's ranked and graded out at either 30th or 31st worst offensive line. But there's a bright spot on that. Andrew Thomas, who I loved coming out of college, I told my boy that he was the real deal. Played all over the offensive line, was All-American at left and right tackle. So they got a stud there at left tackle. Saquon Barkley, is exceptional. And even with this offensive line not playing that well, he's still eating. But, it's kind of a one-trick thing on offense, and all you need to do is slow that down because this defense hasn't been playing as well. I know they've had a lot of injuries. So, supposedly I went and looked at the guys that are injured, and I know those guys have attributed to, their hot start. But, the only guys that are super pivotal on that team that are injured that I seen were Adoree Jackson and somebody else was injured. Can't remember who it was. A lot of those guys are injured. They're not really all that good. So, still, injuries, they hinder. And it's one of those weird things. It's like in our group chat, I still haven't deciphered, which one is it. Or can you use injuries as an excuse or you can't? Because depending on how you catch some of the guys in the group chat on certain weeks, it's, suck it up and play through your injuries and the result's the result. And then all of a sudden when their team's injured, it's we got injuries and shit. Which one is it? Excuses or no excuses? This team's going to be a playoff team. But if they don't get the right matchup in the playoffs, there's just a lot of teams I feel like they can't beat in the playoffs. But yeah, Giants have overachieved. I do see them taking a slide back. I think they'll probably win 9 games. I think they win 9 games. 9, maybe 10 games, and that's what we said their ceiling was last year. Love some of the young defensive players on the defensive side of the ball. But yeah, they need to go out, try to get themselves some more weapons for Daniel Jones next year. Interested to see if Barkley resigns. If I'm Saquon Barkley, I'm a running back. I'm going to go to whatever team pays me the most money if I'm a running back because every running back gets hurt just like he did. So I'd find the spot that's going to pay me the most and give me the best opportunity to win. Interested to see if he thinks the Giants is that spot. Giants of 15. Number 14, Los Angeles Chargers sitting at 5-5. So the Chargers, we liked them more. A lot of people, thought that this team would win the division. Most of the reason why this team isn't, in the top 10 is because they've just had a rash of injuries. They've had serious injuries on both sides of the ball. They lost to the Chiefs over the weekend. Really good quarterback. Underrated running back. I call him a playmaker. In Austin Eckler, dude's just really good catching the ball, really good running the ball inside, outside. I just think he's really underrated. They lost some of their key offensive linemen, and he's still playing pretty well through that. I still think Herbert's playing well despite the offensive linemen being down. I think people kind of expected Herbert to make these crazy incremental jumps, but it's kind of hard when everyone's hurt. He's had injuries to his wide receivers. I think Williams just went down last night with an ankle, even though they just got Keenan Allen back. They've had a lot of injuries on defense. And so this team's proven it's a solid football team, managing to stay afloat at 5-5. Depending on when guys are slated to come back, I know Rashawn Slater's out for the whole season. This team could knock in the door. They're definitely one of the higher teams on the bubble. People think the coach is a little bit sus because he goes for a lot on 4th down and stuff, but I do think he's a solid coach. I think he just has to, do a better job at knowing when to be aggressive and when not to be aggressive, knowing to, some have always said about the guys in the group chat. I think all of us, still value taking a field goal at certain times, and it's like it's never ending. We were like, they should have taken a field goal when they didn't, but I don't think it matters. The Chiefs are just really good. So Los Angeles 14. Also, I think this is probably where Odell Beckham should go, but that's a whole nother can of worms. Number 13, up 2 more, the Washington Commanders sitting at 6-5. So again, a lot of people around here love these NFC East teams, so I know a lot of people that are fans of all 4 of the teams in this division. Commanders, I thought the Commanders would finish third. And there's looking like there's going to be a chance that they still will. Now, I know a lot of people that love the Commanders enough saying they would win the division. I think that's crazy. But this team's starting to get healthy on both sides of the ball. The defense is starting to play a lot better. The defense is starting to play to where they should play with that personnel. Offensive line is solid. They're starting to, between their little two-headed monster back there with Gibson and Robinson, they're starting to become a little more balanced, just enough for Taylor Heineke to spread the pill around. Taylor Heineke, people talk trash about Taylor Heineke, but, honestly, I think he makes better decisions than Carson Wentz. And he's got a live arm. Durable, he's athletic, can run a little bit. And I think he brings a level of, focused and caredness and leadership to this offense. He's not a world beater. This team could easily just go out and, find someone else to play for them and stuff like that. But I do think he brings a lot of things to the table that Wentz doesn't. And he's also available on top of that. Terry McLaurin, super underrated. If that guy had the quarterback that some of these wide receivers have, this dude would, just be way better and put up way crazier numbers than he already puts up. Love the offensive weapons. They're, 4 deep at wide receiver. If you add Sims in there, people know it's not a household name. I always forget his first name, but Sims makes play. Every time he turns, he's making plays. Love this little run this team's on. See if they can keep it up. Giants got a little competition here. I wouldn't be surprised if the Commanders finish in third and the Giants finish in last. Washington, 13. Number 12, up 1, basically by proxy, Tennessee Titans. I think they're 7-3. Every now and then I forget to do that. Yeah, so they're 7-3, not 6-3. The Titans, again, I've talked about this team, and the soup doesn't change. They get stirred with this team. This team's gotten back to their identity. They have the personnel to play balanced, controlled style of football, and they're getting just enough for their defense to win some of these close games. Tannehill, healthy, playing exceptionally well this last week. Obviously, this is one of those teams where, they normally don't play really well from behind and they can't win shootouts. But when this team's well coached by Mike Vrabel, and this team just plays really sound, fundamental, disciplined football. When you have steadiness at quarterback, you have one of the best running backs in the league, you got some athletic wide receivers. Not the best wide receivers, they're athletic, they get open, in a really good defense and a really good coach disciplined team. You can go pretty far in a weak division. So Tennessee sits here at 7-3, and I did say on the pod to start the year that I thought that Mike Vrabel is going to show why he's one of the best coaches in the league. I think he's shown it this year. They're really good situationally, really good with their play calling. I don't think this team can go far in the playoffs, and I think a lot of teams on the AFC side have the personnel to, beat this team up. Bengals actually play them this weekend, so everyone knows that the Bengals beat them in the playoffs last year. Key matchup for the Bengals. They got to get out here and punch the Titans in the mouth like fucking Jeff Saturday says when he wakes up in the middle of the night. He's like, I'll punch him in the mouth. When he's like half asleep at night. Because Jeff Saturday is going to stay the coach of that team. Anyways, love you, Jeff Saturday. But, Tennessee sitting at 12. Staying put, Seattle Seahawks. Again, Seattle Seahawks playing better defense than people thought. Love their young defensive backs. They're playing well. Solid linebacker play from Jordan Brooks. This team needs to build a little better on their defensive lines. Not really all that great, but their back half, if you count the linebackers, is playing pretty decent this year. Offensive line's playing better than people thought. Charles Cross, not too shabby. Good young running backs. They get a good push up front. And they play a balanced, play action style of attack, and they like to spam the ball, not scared to take shots down the field. And then the wrinkle with Geno Smith having his resurgence, the fact that he's got that running capability, which I think would have helped him more if he used it earlier on in his career. I feel like early on in his career, they never really tapped into his ability to run effectively. It didn't lay or design runs in for him enough, or plays where he can get out on the perimeter and throw on the run and maybe make runs to the sideline and pick up first downs with his feet. But I just love the play calling. I like everything they're doing, and I think he fits what Pete Carroll likes to do. I think that, he's not obviously talent this year. It's kind of counterintuitive to say it, but Russ is a shell of himself, but he is a talented player. And I think Geno is I think he's like a kind of like a great value Russ, and I think it really works in this system. He does a great job staying focused, running the offense, and doing what you should do. Go to your two elite playmakers over and over and over again. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, underrated pass-catching tight end, and Will Disley. This team's really tough. I don't think this team wins the division. I think Tampa takes it back. But this team's probably going to be a playoff team. So, fucking wild year this year. Seattle 11. Speaking of Tampa Bay Buccaneers sitting at 5-5. Team's starting to get healthy. Tom's starting to play a little better. I feel like at some point, no matter what's going on in anyone's personal life, a team that's this talented and this well-coached, especially with a leader like Tom, eventually a couple weeks of some bumps and bruises, once the dudes start getting healthier, you start to put it all back together. This is still one of the best offenses in the league. Even though their offensive line's beat up, it's still one of the best passing attacks in the league. They're like 5 deep at wide receiver. Defensively, you could make an argument that on paper it's got the best defensive personnel. Front seven, in my opinion, is the best front seven in the NFL. Defensive backs, albeit they're young, they're very underrated. Murphy Bunting, Carlton Jones. And there's another kid that's a corner that's good for that team. And then obviously they have really good safeties. I really think that this team's going to go 10-7, maybe 10-11 wins and win the division. And they'll be right back in the mix of the playoffs. I think that when this team's healthy, it's one of the more complete teams in the league. Tampa Bay storming back, staying put at 10. So this is what I said in the beginning where, I think I kind of jumped the gun. I made the case that the reason why I didn't have Minnesota in the top 10 was because, and actually I put the number wrong in there on the arrow sign because they were 3. I meant to put them down 6. This team won a lot of really close games against teams they shouldn't have had close games to. The defense is definitely leaky. Kirk Cousins still shows that he could be inconsistent at times and not play well under pressure. I still love this Minnesota Vikings team, obviously, at 8-2 to win the division. But they're going to have to get it together on defense, and they're going to have to be more consistent on offense, especially in these big games, man. They got bent over by the Dallas Cowboys over the weekend. It was brutal. And I felt that first play when friggin' Parsons came off the edge and cracked Kirk Cousins. I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be a long night and a long day. And it sure was. Minnesota, like I said, similar to the Giants. In my opinion, they're a little similar to the Giants. They're just more explosive on offense. Both teams have solid defensive personnel, quote unquote, but not getting the most out of them and definitely weak on the defensive side in some areas. I would say this defense, on paper is better than the Giants, but they probably, in terms of effectiveness, it's around the same ballpark. But what they have that the Giants don't have is they're very explosive down the field. I mean, you got Justin Jefferson. He kind of got clapped and locked up by Trevon Diggs, who everyone acts like sucks too, but whatever. But yeah, this team is still a handful. I mean, you can't roll in against Minnesota right now at 8-2 and just act like it's going to be a giving game. They're going to be probably pissed off after that blowout. I don't know who they play this week, but, if you're not a top-tier elite team, good luck against this Minnesota Vikings team next week or this weekend. Minnesota Vikings at 9. Or no, they might play on Thanksgiving. Not sure. But yeah, Minnesota Vikings at 9. Down 3 from 5, the Baltimore Ravens sitting at 7-3. So for me, the Baltimore Ravens, I still think this team could probably win the division depending on what happens with the Bengals. But I just think that Baltimore keeps having injuries at spots they can't afford to have injuries at. Their wide receiver core and their tight end core, they just keep getting nicked up. Some of their key guys are in and out of rotations. out of the rotation week by week. You just never know who's going to show up and play. The running backs are always injured. You never know who's going to be in that rotation. And I do like the pickup, obviously, picking up Roquan Smith. But I do think this defense is very inconsistent and plays undisciplined at times. And I think at a lot of times at some of the positions, tackling is very bad for this team right now. So for me, this team is not healthy enough and explosive enough in some areas and disciplined enough in some areas to be consistent. 7-3, they struggled against Carolina last week, which I didn't expect. I made a $1 parlay for them to go off on Carolina, and they only beat them by 10 points. You got to do better than that against that team when you're a top 10 team. This team's just proven time and time again throughout the course of the year, they could struggle pretty much against anyone. They've blown leads, they've had to play, and then they've had games where they give up a lead early and have to storm all the way back to have a shot at winning. Just a very shoddy, all over the place season, even though they're 7-3. Won a lot of close games. I love this team in the beginning of the year, but they're just proven to be a little bit too inconsistent for me to have them be a top 5 team right now. Had to see more out of this team. So again, I still think I like what they have in their skill positions, and I think it fits what they have to do, but what they want to do with Lamar Jackson, but they have to be healthy. I still think it would help this team if they were able to snag themselves a number 1 wide receiver. This is another place where I could see Odell Beckham going to. It would be interesting if they could sign Odell, if Odell's even fully healthy to play. A lot of people talk about this Odell shit. We don't even know how healthy the dude is. I'm sure reports are conflicting, but Baltimore at 8. Number 2, or up to number 7 from number 9, the Bengals. So Bengals starting to get it together here. I don't have them as high as some of these other places have them. I mean, I freaking Colin Cowherd had the Bengals up at fucking 4 or 5 or something. Some places don't even have them in the top 10. But I think based off how good this roster is, how good these weapons are, how good the defense is, and obviously having an elite quarterback, I just think this team is so much better, on paper. And, the past couple weeks has been playing better than a lot of the teams behind them. They had a close game with the Steelers over the weekend, even with most of that is because Burrow turned the ball over twice. Wouldn't have been as close if Burrow didn't have those turnovers, but not the worst turnovers ever. I mean, you can't help it when, the defensive linemen are jumping up and just catching interceptions. It's a little crazy, but I think they're becoming a little more efficient on offense. Burrow ranks 5th in EPA per dropback, and the pocket was really clean last week. So I'm proud at that. We turned the ball over a couple of times, but this offensive line probably had its best performance against the Steelers, which week 1 they got absolutely demolished. So happy to see the offensive line have arguably its best performance. Well, it's definitely their best performance all year. Burrow had some really clean pockets and just picked this defense apart the Steelers. That's not really that good out on the boundary. Jamar Chase is scheduled to come back either against the Titans or the Chiefs. We'll see. Mixon's out of concussion protocol, but Samaje Perine stepped in, scored 3 touchdowns. Absolutely crazy. So I like the depth on our team. I'm just hoping that everyone's back and healthy for the playoffs. We got everyone back on defense except for Chidobe Awuzie, who's out for the whole entire year, which is going to be huge. I do think this team probably ends up being, the 6th seed. But based off the injuries that we have, losing Chidobe Awuzie is going to be huge. I think we'll struggle in the playoffs with some of the more pass-happy teams because we've been known to get into shootouts with teams. Love the defense. Love that the offensive line's better. Love the quarterback. Love the skill position players. What's not to like about this team? Let's just hope they can build upon these last couple weeks. Tough game against Tennessee this weekend. Bengals at 7. Number 6, up to the Dallas Cowboys. So this, again, the Cowboys, are one of the more complete teams in the league. Their front seven's been playing off the chain this year. They're top 3 in pressures, top 3 in sacks. Offensive line is 9th in total grade in terms of offensive line. They're getting Smith back. They're going to kick Tyler Smith back into guard. And this offensive line is going to be one of the best offensive lines in the league down the stretch. Sitting here at 7-3, these Dallas Cowboys still explosive through the air, but where they crushed everyone was layering in, they played pretty decently balanced football, layering in a lot of their underneath stuff to their wide receivers and running the ball at the right times, and Pollard, I mean, some people would call it a breakout, but, Pollard's their best back right now. Pollard has like 1,000 all-purpose yards this year. He's on pace for 1,200 rushing yards and like 400 receiving yards or something. And, it's just wild to me that people pay so much money for running backs because there's always another one that comes along. There's always more. There's always running backs out there. Guys, there's always running backs out there. Zeke's cap hit, the boys in the chat told me it was $18.5 million. So you're not going to be able to move off Zeke at almost 28 even if you wanted to. And so then you're in the conundrum, do you pay, the 23-year-old in Pollard, 23 or 24-year-old in Pollard, how much do you pay him to stay when you still got to pay Zeke? Pollard might hit the open market and go play for someone else for, buco bucks. But it's all good. If Zeke stays healthy, Zeke's on pace for over 10,000 yards, possibly 100 touchdowns. What you do is you go out and you get another running back in the draft. You let Pollard walk. Put your money aside so you can get more. Keep paying the offensive line. Pay the defensive players you have. And you got good wide receivers. You have a number one in CeeDee Lamb. You have Gallup, who's a good B, and even one season showed he could put up number one production. Underrated tight end in Dalton Schultz. So yeah, this team, front seven, gnarly, defensive backs, really good. It's basically going to come down to coaching, penalties, and how Dak plays. Dak played really well last week. They got a matchup against the Giants this week on Thanksgiving. I do expect them to win, although the Giants are a little dinged up. I'm interested to see if the Giants can make it close, even with missing a few players. But this team's legit. Everyone in the group chat, they all start arguing over, the Giants ain't shit, or not the Giants. They all start arguing over, the Eagles fans and the Cowboys fans in my group chat just go at the Cowboys because they haven't won a Super Bowl in a while and all this other stuff. And they just automatically assume that, the Cowboys ain't shit because, they'll lose the playoffs or whatever. But no one knows how the playoffs are going to go. You can sit around and have opinions and predict, but, you won't know until it fucking happens. So it's just funny watching these guys and they're scream at each other, like trying to bet each other $500 and shit over these fucking games. I'm just happy that I don't get that attached to this shit. Like, when the Bengals lost Super Bowl, shout out to my boy Chad. Chad was like calling me, asking me like I was okay, like I lost a child or something. But, it's going to be interesting to see. This is definitely one of the more complete football teams. Let's see what they could do. They had like fucking 9 penalties in the Eagles game. If you don't have all those penalties and Dak plays that football game, Cowboys might have beat those Eagles. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to this healthy Cowboys team. Hopefully they're fully healthy and the Eagles are fully healthy. That's going to be the game at the end. That's going to be the game of the second half, those two playing each other. Cowboys at 6. Number 5, the Miami Dolphins at 7-3. So the Dolphins, they understand the blueprint in today's NFL. Today's NFL, you have to build a defense that's competent. I didn't say that. I said competent. It doesn't have to be elite. Doesn't have to be, a top 10 defense. It's just got to be a competent defense. And then you load up on offensive firepower because if you have a good enough quarterback, and you have good enough skill position players, and you can protect a little bit, you will still score points on the quote-unquote elite defenses. I would say probably 7 out of 10 times. That's about what's been happening this past 5 or 6 years in the NFL. Love the coach. Fully understands that I'm going to go out, rebuild this offensive line, get as many playmakers as I can, put it around a kid who's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league, does have a big enough arm to get to the ball of the guys, and I'm going to scheme guys open, layer in my attacks, have efficient runs when I run the ball. They're capable of running the football. They do it when they should. And they just spam the pill to all their players. absolutely absurd. This offense is just clicking right now. Tua, arguably Tua, he's not going to get it because Mahomes is playing so well. But, if you look at Tua's numbers in terms of efficiency, he's probably going to finish the year in the low 30s for touchdowns, low to mid 30s, with like an insane efficiency and accuracy rate. He's grading out at a 91 right now. Tua's the man. And like a lot of people are like, oh, Tua's too slow. And he doesn't need to be running around or nothing. You need to put him in the pocket. You need to protect him and let him operate. Happy to see him doing so well. I really believed in this player. I really did. I really thought that he was accurate enough. I mean, he's not. I understood the comp. A lot of people were like, oh, but he's left-handed Drew Brees. His game kind of is that. It's Drew Brees-ish. Not as good as Drew, obviously. But yeah, I love this football team. They play just a good enough defense, and then they'll drop 30 points on you almost every single week. So interested to see what this team can do. I mean, I don't think that this team is going to be – I'd be surprised if this is a deep run team. They could easily lose first or second round in the playoffs. But who knows? They might win the division with the way the Bills are playing, but we'll see. Miami Dolphins, 7-3. Number 4, speaking of the Bills, sitting here at 7-3. That was supposed to change that to down 1 because they were originally 3. I think I'm like dyslexic or something. I don't fucking know. It's supposed to be down 1 to number 4. So the Bills down 1 to number 4. I don't know. The Bills are kind of a hard read because they still have injuries. And I agree. I do think that Josh Allen I agree with a lot of people when I say Josh Allen's kind of not played as well as he should play these past handful of weeks. But I also think teams do have bad games no matter how good you are. Unless you actually go undefeated. People act like it's fucking just insane when teams lose. They think it's absolutely fucking crazy. Well, sitting here at 7-3 with one of the best rosters in the NFL is pretty damn good to me. They just expect, Josh Allen to be perfect. But, that's what haters do. Just expect players to be perfect all the time. They could have rested on their laurels and gone out and just played down to the Browns level last week. But, they overcame a deficit and they took the Browns out. Now they're sitting here at 7-3. This team's going to be a team that still makes a deep playoff run. They're going to be there, probably knocking on the door, probably still going to make it to the AFC Championship. I'd have to go look and see what players they are missing, but this team still has depth. A lot of their young players have stepped up and played really well. Tons of playmakers on offense. This is a hard team to beat, hard team to defend offensively. So you can say what you want about the Bills and Josh Allen. Yes, they've slid back a little bit for me, but this is still one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL. Bills at 4. But I love this team. Sitting here at number 3, the San Francisco 49ers. Again, I've talked about this team ad nauseum if they just get it together. They just got to get it together. Right now, Jimmy Garoppolo's playing really, really well for them and what they need in the system. This team just has an unlimited number of weapons to just spam all over the place. They got, Kittle, Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Kyle Juszczyk, Jennings, Christian McCaffrey. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league, big part due to this man right here, which is insane. I sent my buddy Keegan, shout out to Keegs. His grade last year was like a 97 or some shit. Just absolutely obscene. I've never seen a grade that high. It's like that light seafoam blue or whatever. They're just deep and really high level on both sides of football. Front 7, gnarly. Defensive backs, gnarly. Just weapons on offense, one of the best offensive lines in the league. And this team, again, John Lynch and this organization knows how to build football teams. They've been building football teams for a while. They just haven't totally gotten quarterback perfectly right. They built a good enough team back in the day with Colin Kaepernick, but he wasn't good enough to get it done. Now they've built a really good enough team with this team, and they got Jimmy Garoppolo. So this team's going to only be able to optimize itself depending on how optimal Jimmy Garoppolo plays. Depending on what this team's looking like in terms of how far some of their players are extended out, what the contracts will look like, this team is in prime position. If they got a window of 2 to 3 years where they don't got to sign players, they got enough cap space, you mortgage the next 2 years, you go get yourself Aaron Rodgers. Or you try to get yourself Lamar Jackson. I'd love to see Lamar Jackson sign here as a free agent or Aaron Rodgers to go here. But this team, storming back, they're going to win their division. Oh, yeah. This team's the real deal. So they're going to be right back in the mix here, right back in the mix for the Super Bowl. Let's see if Garoppolo can put them over the top this year. San Francisco 3. Staying put at number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles. What's there not to like about the Eagles? I mean, I was a little bummed that they didn't smash. The Colts because the Colts aren't good. They're sitting here at 9-1. Obviously, you can make an argument it's the best team in the league. They led the league in turnover differential with I think 19 turnovers, and only committing 2 or 3. But in their last 2 games, they've turned the ball over a bunch, and that's flipped. I think they're 29th in turnover differential last 2 games. I don't know if it's just, guys not up to play because they've been smashing people, but, some of these teams had really good game plans to, the stunts have been good coming after getting pressure on Jalen Hurts. In the game that they did lose, again, I thought the team that they lost to, I can't remember who it was that they lost to. Oh, duh. The friggin' Commanders. I thought the Commanders did a really good job in that game, disguising a lot of their, zone shells and mixed in their man coverages really well against them. And I just really think if you watch it, they just had, Hurts a little bit confused. I mean, the offensive weapons are so good that, a lot of times Hurts either has to make his first or second read, and he can force it to these dudes to go make these plays. Hurts, you got to force him to, you got to take his first and second read away and force him to, make more deeper decisions throughout the course of the route, the whole entire route tree. What sucks about that is he has the ability to get out and move and run. He's so dynamic after the play breaks down. But this roster is just fantastic on both sides of the football. They won't have Dallas Goedert this week, and I don't know who they play. Let me go see who they play. Which will be huge for me. I think Dallas Goedert is extremely underrated, and they don't have him. So they play the Packers this week. I expect them to go out there. Honestly, I expect them to go out there and run the Packers over. I think, but we'll see. I mean, who knows? This Packers team, could they start clawing themselves back? I don't know. I just think the Eagles should be a heavy favorite against this Packers team. Eagles front 7, pretty solid. DBs, solid. I do think that at times, if you attack this team right, I do think you could take advantage of them in slot positions, and I think you could attack some of their safeties and take advantage of them there. But on the boundary, they've been playing pretty well. Won't have Dallas Goedert, but this team's still going to be able to run the ball. Next week, they'll probably do a good job, getting Brown in a position to be on guys and get him the ball in open space and make him make moves on guys. Could be an interesting matchup, Brown versus Jair Alexander. I don't know who's going to be. Is it Stokes going to be playing on Smith? But yeah, pretty cool matchup in terms of the offense and the defense through the air next week. So yeah, still one of the best teams in the league. Still one of the favorites to win the whole thing. Philly at 1 or Philly at 2. Number 1, Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, again, once we get up to these top handful of teams, these teams are so stacked. My only criticism of the Kansas City Chiefs is that their DBs, every now and then, if you can get into shootouts with this team. If you get good enough protection, you can beat this team on the back end. I think Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be the MVP. They're I'm pretty sure they're averaging more than 2 times EPA per drive than whoever's in second place, which is an insane stat. And they're doing all this stuff without Tyreek Hill. Again, like I said last year, and I've said this a few times, this team, they were going to do the same thing they did last year, just with a different coat of paint. Just went out, got more pieces now, and Andy Reid's just doing the same thing. People need to learn. Andy Reid did the same shit. Andy Reid, a lot of the times, and his philosophy was get a lot of playmakers layer in the route tree, spread them all over the field, run at the right times. This team can run the football. This team can throw the ball in the boundary, down the field, middle of the field, underneath. This team's, got every play in the playbook. They got plays in spades. Front seven, really damn good. Nick Bolton leading the charge on that front seven. A lot of people didn't. Nick Bolton wasn't a household name for a lot of people, but was fantastic coming out of college. Holla at PFF because they're the ones that knew Nick Bolton was going to be legit. But yeah, the only reason why I like the Bengals to match up against the Chiefs is because, we've proven we can beat them in shootouts. But obviously shootouts can be like kind of a 50-50 thing. But yeah, this Chiefs team is just stacked on both sides of the ball. Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league right now. This team is my favorite to make it to the Super Bowl for the AFC, and we'll see if they make it happen, Captain. Yeah, those are my power rankings. Let me know what you guys think of them. Also, this weekend, I'm going to be posting a podcast. I haven't decided if I'm going to go live for it or not, but I'm getting my arm wrestling team together, hopefully Saturday night. I got tentative yeses from everyone, and we're going to start doing like a monthly pod where we talk about arm wrestling if anyone's interested in that. I think it'd be a good little wrinkle sports-wise to the channel. We've been a team now for about a year and a half, 2 years. We've been pulling together for 2 years, made the team about a year and a half ago, the Heavy Hookers. I'm going to have our coach Sean on, who was, one of the best in the United States back in the day at super heavyweight. My boy Freddie, who just won a super match out in Ohio. My buddy Matt, who's starting to climb the ranks. Possibly my buddy Rich, who's been climbing the ranks too. And obviously me, this is my first year competing last year. I did okay, no worse than fourth place on my right arm. But I still need work. It's just, arm wrestling is way more nuanced than people know. And I'd like to start interviewing fighters and arm wrestlers on the pod too. So I think that would be fun. So if you guys are interested in arm wrestling, probably shoot for like 6 o'clock, probably Saturday evening, to try to get all the guys on at once. And yeah, if you're interested, be there, be square, like, subscribe, comment down here. Let me know what you think about the power rankings, and we'll holla at you later.